I'm not actually going to drink 8 liters of water in 5 minutes. And I can't believe you put the timer on. And I can't believe you were going to let me do this. I would die. You're about to watch me kill myself on your show.
This is my entrance to the satanic side of podcast media.
This was your blood sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to let a guest die to get the 2 million TikTok views that it would be of him gargling on the ground, going like, only 1 liter left. Ciaran O'Loughlin, thank you for joining me on the pod, a.k.a. Oloff, a.k.a. the Valencia Vagabond, a.k.a. the Madrid Marauder, a.k.a. what's another city in Mount? What was the name of the small town you're in now?
Montcoffer.
Montcoffer makeup artist, because goddamn, do you look good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm doing my best seduction for you right now, wearing this button down, because at some point we're going to get into the Diddy allegation. So I thought, let me have my button down ready so I can get the seduction action just good to go. Flash some nip, just dive deeply into it.
I've got the white tigers. I feel they have a kind of seductive, sort of 80s like Michael Jackson before he was fully ghoulish kind of vibe.
Yeah, they do. It's like, I don't know where to look, into your eyes or the tiger's eyes. And then they all just start to look the same. And then I'm in a dark room with a secret recording, and then boom, there you go.
Boom, life's over.
Boom, life's over. Exactly. Yeah, Diddy's pocket for life. So before we get into all that, because we were talking before about just a laundry list of topics that we thought would be interesting to get into. And I was actually listening to a conversation yesterday that you put out on your channel, and you were talking to Yoni Wolf, a music artist. Mm-hmm. And it was a fascinating conversation. And I made a note of something you said that surprised me. And you said to Yoni that the idea of religion and spirituality has become more appealing to you as you've gotten older. So I wanted to ask you, because I feel like I've gone in the opposite direction. So I was curious what you felt was drawing you closer towards religion as we're aging.
Yeah, it's a specific kind, I guess, is more appealing to me. I always, well, not always, but most of my adult life, I believed in some version of spirituality. But I guess, to be honest, a more traditional dualistic form of spirituality has become more appealing to me. I wouldn't say I necessarily believe in that form of spirituality, but the idea that us and God are separate, and that we're all just individual humans, and there's God, and we're humans, and we all have a soul, but we're not connected. We're not part of God. We're just like creations of God, and we all exist as individuals. That to me is really appealing. There's the more new agey idea, right? That we are all God, and we're all the universe, and we're all part of the same living, breathing thing, and we all return to that. And I don't know why I don't like that, and I feel that idea is very pervasive, and sometimes you almost feel it, and it feels to be almost the predominant idea probably among our generation, if they have any spiritual or religious beliefs. And I get it. I get where it comes from, and I can see it, but like, I'm not sure I like that idea so much. But having spiritual beliefs, I guess to be honest, the main thing is that makes me, I mean, I had experiences before on ayahuasca and things that made me believe in something, and I wasn't totally atheistic before then anyway. But in more recent times, I think seeing a lot of the evil in the world, and seeing a lot of it seems clear to me that a lot of very evil people, very powerful people, are involved in dark spiritual practices. And the thing is that these people are not stupid. Some of them might be misguided, maybe, but the prevalence of these dark spiritual practices is hard to explain. It's hard to explain in a from an atheist perspective. I mean, you could, but to me, it doesn't really cut it. And it seems like I do kind of believe that that there is, even if it's a immensely corruptible form of power, there is some form of power in what they're doing, and they're getting something from it, and it's a poison chalice. But it's very bizarre how all of these people seemed, or not all of them, but a huge number of these people seem to practice these I mean, you look at things like these giant effigies being burned at Bohemian Grove, you look at all the weird occult symbolism, all the stuff with the one eye covered, all of the stuff you hear about the 1% and all of their bizarre practices. And then you see all this masonry stuff everywhere. If you look at videos, for example, of there's a good video it's on like BitChute or something, or Rumble maybe. It's a compilation of all the Freemason symbolism in movies, and it's crazy. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen, because when you see it, you go, how do you? It seems at first like, okay, that's whatever, and then you think about it and you're like, there is so much Freemason symbolism in movies. How is this idea so powerful, and how are these people so powerful? And of course, the secrecy in itself, it lends itself to power. I mean, it is secrecy is a tool for power, but the extent of all of this weird occult stuff you see, the references, the statues, the symbols, all of it leads me to believe that there is some kind of dark spirituality going on all around us. And that makes me think, if Satan or demons or dark spiritual practices are real, and I've seen enough stuff to think that they probably are, then I also think that the other side of it is real, and that's kind of where I want to be.
Yeah, no, it's weird to think about, because if you reverse engineer it, and you were saying how not everyone who reaches that level of power then becomes corrupted, has their spirit corrupted, and they get involved in all this weird occult shit, weird sexual fascination with children and each other, blackmailing, like all this stuff. There are a percentage of people that never get close to that. And so I'm wondering what the gateway drug is to full on, Bohemian Grove. Like, what is the thing that gets your mind open to those ideas? Because now that you're saying it, it's making me think about all this new wave sort of like girl boss energy, be in control of your own life and your own, entrepreneurial God, in a sense. At least that's huge in the United States. It's just like, fuck everything else. You're in control. Don't give a shit about a lot of the greater aspects of your being. If you're in your 20s and 30s, especially, like, have tunnel vision and get to where you need to be to then enjoy the greater aspects of life. Like, put off those aspects first and just care about yourself, be selfish. And I think that can be good to an extent, but then, like, to me, that sort of seems like an entryway to that, is where you start to think that you're in control of everything, and you get a little taste of that, and then you're like, oh, I started my own business, I make more and more money, and it all started with me, reading motivational quotes when I was 24, telling me I didn't have to give a shit about anything else, and I have all the power and all this influence. So yeah, and you do start to see the bullshit in it, if your mind's in the right place. And I hope that my mind is in that place. Not that I would ever get to the point where people would care about recruiting me into some sort of occult society, but it does seem like the obsession that we have with control in the West could be a gateway to later going to the dark side, to reclaim that control, like when you're at that crossroads in your life, which path you want to go.
Yeah, almost like not that you think that you're a god, but you're filling the role of God in your life. You're like, I don't need God. I've got myself. I'm in control of everything.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything. And then that's what I mean is the alternative to that, the humility of being like, I'm just a person and I'm just trying to do my job on this earth, kind of, is so appealing now. Whereas when I was younger, I think I was more in the egomania and control obsession of like wanting to feel all of that and to be all of that and to embody all of it and to everything, just wanting kind of everything and now, I even sometimes I don't look at certain things, like when you hear about certain things that have a lot of power and they can help you in certain ways. Sometimes and probably it's overly paranoid, but I don't look at them because I think like, I don't really feel I need that or should have it, or even like I was reading about manifestation recently, a bit like you mentioned about these quotes and stuff, how it's a gateway. And I was reading about manifestation, and the more I read into it, I was like, I don't know, like I don't. If it is what people say it is, which I don't believe it is, but if it is, I don't want that. I don't want the power to dictate outcomes that are completely external to me, to alter other people's behavior and choices, to alter reality. Because what does that say about reality if it's totally flexible and it's all in my mind? And I just don't think that's good to do. And I wouldn't, even if I believed in it, I wouldn't want to harness it,
Yeah, no, I've seen videos of people on the the hyper motivational side of Instagram where it's just like constantly in your face. And there was a video of one guy I remember who said he wrote Porsche on his shower every day for like a year and a half. And he said, because I'm writing down Porsche, and he had other financial goals too, but to him, doing that action led to the outcome of him being able to buy a Porsche in 18 months and make a certain amount of money as a salary. And when I was 23 years old, you hear that and you think, that's damn, like whatever it takes to fucking fill my pockets, I'm open to it. I at least I was like, all right, well, maybe there is something to manifestation. But then to your point, you don't think of the other side of it, which is like, what if someone was just writing, you know, Holocaust 2.0 on the shower for a year and a half, and then all of a sudden they were the next Fuhrer? And it's like, if reality could be dictated in that fashion that easily with that low effort, that would be an incredibly scary thing. You can't buy into one side without buying into the other.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think their beliefs aren't uniform, but what I gathered is generally the people who are really into it, I think what a lot of them believe is, first of all, everything is vibration. They think everything is based around vibration. I think there's a lot of like hermetic principles there. Everything is based around vibration, and that there are an infinite number of parallel universes, which for various reasons I don't buy, but they think there are an infinite number of parallel universes, and that by manifesting, what you're actually doing is you're altering your vibration to shift slowly through these adjacent, slightly changing parallel universes until you reach the one where you have the Porsche. So you're not really altering someone else's mind by saying, I want this woman to fall in love with me. You're actually just slowly moving yourself over to the reality where she does love you, which this reality already exists. Which I guess makes it less of an invasion of somebody else's sort of agency and being, but to me, a horrifying idea that there are an infinite number of realities and that you can kind of surf through them. And that kind of stuff, I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't even want to fucking know. I don't even want to think about it. It's just, I think it's wrong.
It would be hilarious to imagine like a Wolf of Wall Street type guy that's just checking doors into different universes, and he opens up one door and it's him raising a happy family in an Italian villa somewhere, and he closes it and he's like, fuck that. And he opens another door, it's just mountains of cocaine, piles of cash, and he's like, I'll take that one. That's the universe that I think is sustainable. Which I guess if you're going by that logic, you could visit different universes when you wanted to. If vibrate, I guess you would charge up your vibrations if you weren't happy with your current universe, and then you just like slowly gyrate into the more fulfilling door, however that works.
Do you know Naval? What's his name? Naval Ravikant or
Naval
Ravikant?
Ravikant. Yeah.
I've been reading his book, man. It's really good. Well, it's not written by him. Someone else wrote it based on his stuff, and some of it is really good. And there's a part I was reading last night, and he was talking about like the universe is sort of like indifferent to you, and like everything is happening. You're not so important, and everything is happening independently of you. And the fact that everything is the way that it is and is happening now, it means that everything is perfect. It's all perfect because that's how it is. And in a way that he described a bit more articulate than I can, everything is kind of perfect. And so instead of trying to shift into a different parallel reality, I think it's more comforting to just go, whatever it is kind of what it's meant to be. You should still strive for change in your own life, but the outcome of that is whatever is meant to be, and it's perfect, and you have to it's all you have, so you have to like love it and appreciate it. And I think that takes you a lot further than like, I want this and I want that and I'm going to try and get this and have that, because in the end you have an endless appetite for more. And I know it's a cliche, everyone talks about this, right? But it's true. Like you'll never stop wanting more, basically.
Yeah, but you do feel it can become a bit of a cliche, but I have had more moments recently just because life in Panama is much slower and you're sort of afforded more of those still aspects during the day, where normally in a city like New York, where I'm usually based, it's just you can't get the same sort of stillness unless you leave. But I've had, and I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say, soul shifting moments where I do feel that acceptance of everything is fine, everything is okay, it's the way it's supposed to be, this sort of offloading of this massive weight to shift my universe to where I need it to be, into, okay, I'm here, it's perfect, who gives a fuck, this, there's two cats shitting right in front of me, the sun's setting, I have a beer, I'm with a couple friends, who gives a fuck? Like it's this is exactly how it's supposed to be, rather than at other times where my mind, I would be in that moment, but my mind would be racing with the way that I want things to be that often aren't even part of that moment. It could be a podcast thing, it could be a family thing, it could be anything, and it just rips you out of the shit that's just right in front of you to enjoy, that we often just, or I often just blow right by.
Yeah. That, I feel that's just our battle. Like those of us who aren't in the middle of like a war or something, even those of us who have quite serious problems, still, if you're not facing an immediate existential threat and you don't have like, urgent problems that you have to deal with every waking second of the day, then the real battle really, is just like exactly what you described, trying to tear yourself away from the thoughts of how it can be better and just to be, I guess it depends, doesn't it? Because if you've got like a baby to look after, you can't be sat there going, everything's perfect. The baby needs to, I need to get him to a doctor or feed him, but no, everything's fine in this moment.
No, the baby hasn't eaten in 3 days. It's completely, the shit's all over the place. Diapers full. But damn, this sunset is beautiful. Yeah. You need the balance of both. I wanted to go back to the dark occult sector, because so my sort of entranceway to the Bohemian Grove type shit that's gone on is when I heard Alex Jones on the Tim Dillon show, and he was just going on a whole rant of Bohemian Grove. And this was back when you could have Alex Jones as a guest on YouTube without getting your episode taken down. And so I went to the videos where which I didn't believe existed. He was talking about them on Tim Dillon, and he was saying he was interviewing politicians, powerful people at Bohemian Grove, and got in somehow. And he's there talking to people in fucking masks and people asking them about like, what are you doing here? And some of them will be really honest and say, we're, there's weird shit that goes on here. I'm not willing to talk about it, but yeah, this, there's a reason I'm wearing this falcon mask. And so I wanted to ask you, what's the most convincing piece of evidence you've seen for that sort of occult dark side world of the powerful existing? Because is it Bohemian Grove? Is it something else? Like, what to you convinced you that, yeah, like that's not just a complete conspiracy, there's something there?
Bohemian Grove is probably the main one. That's one you can show to, like, your mum or something, and she'll be like, "Oh, that's weird." Show them them burning this effigy, and they'll still go back to like not caring and just watching, like, whatever their CNN or the Guardian or Fox News or whatever their sort of crap is, and they're not really thinking about it because it's not worth the mental energy for them. But like their age, you know what I mean? But it's something that even someone who is totally outside of this mode of thought, you can show them that effigy being burned, and they'll probably find a way to dismiss it, but it's not easy to dismiss. It's very unusual, really. The Freemason symbolism everywhere, which I know is not explicitly occult, but I think there's a bit more to it. And then probably the stuff with the eyes. I mean, that's a bizarrely common trope. It is really like absurdly common. And
what's the stuff with the eyes?
Covering one eye. Celebrities covering one eye.
Yeah.
And there's so much symbolism. And I've heard the argument, they're just doing that to make people click and to... I'm sorry, that's bullshit. The Christian market is huge. And if Christians see you with like occult symbolism in your videos, people like Lady Gaga who do all this freaky shit in their videos, and Katy Perry, Christians won't touch your music after that. And they might not anyway if it's got like sex in it and stuff, but they won't touch it. And there's so many people who it might give you some level of controversy that gets people talking about you, but it's not worth it. It's not worth the ire that you attract. And the number of people, myself included, who go, I don't want to fucking listen to this weirdo doing all this weird shit in their videos, all this symbolism, all these weird gestures and tropes, whether they know what they're doing or they're such a puppet that they've been told to do it and they're doing it to try and mock us or to try and display something. I don't know. But the extent of the occult symbolism and sort of esoteric symbolism is just bizarre. And I don't claim to understand all of it, to know what all of it means, to know that all of it has some validity. But it's everywhere. Like every mainstream movie, not everyone, but so many mainstream movies, so much pop music. It's prevalent to a point, and where most people don't notice it anyway because they don't know what they're looking for. And you're like, what the fuck is the point of this? Like, why are they doing this? And I've never heard a convincing answer as to why, but I've also never heard anyone convincingly dismiss the existence of it, because once you've started seeing it, you can't unsee it. And I abandon any conspiracy theory the second it becomes nonsense to me. And a lot of ideas like that have just fallen by the wayside for me. And I'm not someone who goes so deep and I claim to have all the answers, because I don't think you can ever find them. But I've seen enough of it where no one could ever tell me that it's not real. What the purpose of it is, I don't know. But it's there.
It feels like the same way that people talk about a deep state in politics. It feels like there's also a deep state in media, music, radio, podcasting, where there's just these all-seeing, just like decades-long figures who have been in the industry that no one knows who they are, knows what their name is. But when you have someone like Lil Nas X that comes along and blows up on TikTok and people say he's an industry plant, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But then it's like there's people in the background that see that and they start nudging the artist in a certain direction, like put on, like satanic makeup, like twerk on the devil, have like all this satanic imagery. And there definitely is a pattern. I mean, like, it's similar to the stuff that Dave Chappelle and Cat Williams called out, which is funny because it's always like the comedians. I feel like you can't, like, when you start to do fucked up shit to such a big extent, a comedian's mind just goes to the place where it's like, this is hilarious. Like, this is so fucked up to the point of like, this is funny, but also this is really fucked up. And it's something about having that sort of comedic mind. It's almost like harder to get these ideas through. Like, you want me to put on horns and twerk on Satan? Like, like I talk about that shit on stage as being hilarious. Like, you're not gonna get me to do that. Or the whole thing with like people trying to get Dave Chappelle and other black media figures, black actors, comedians to put on dresses, where he talks about that, and he's like, "Bitch, I'm not putting on a fucking dress," and all this stuff. There does seem like, I don't know. It's almost like a ritualistic a ritualistic barrier to get people to jump through that are willing to humiliate themselves to a certain extent. And those barriers start early on in those types of industries. And then as the career moves further and further, it's like that deep state figure goes, all right, it's time to like do the next humiliation ritual. Let's see if we'll let them get to that next level. And then like the next humiliate. And then it gets all the way to the point where it's like, you've done so many humiliating things that you can't go back if you want to, because other people have seen it and there's evidence and all this stuff. And I would have thought the same thing of, oh, it's all just a conspiracy. It's all just, but the more you look around, the more you start to see weird, just Illuminati type shit like that.
I wonder sometimes if, like you say, it's the same with the deep state in politics and and it's always so hard to see. And people are like, what's the deep state? And you're like, I can't really describe it to you instantaneously. You can't, it's a bit unfair to try and make someone objectively point to it. It's just something that is obviously there. And I sometimes wonder, imagine you scratch your way through all these layers, the bottom layer, the sort of cronies, and you get past that and the sort of upper management, and then the real big guys. And then you wonder if at the center of it all, if you keep going, there's some kind of gravitational pull of something that's like not even human. There's just something with fame, for example, that's pulling people in from dark places. Like I often wondered, and I've never considered this, but I thought in my mind, I bet if I started doing all this weird symbolism and shit, my music would get big. And I never considered doing it. But I knew in the back of my mind, I just had this feeling like, I bet if I start saying I'm this and that and doing these weird hand gestures, I bet somehow, randomly, my song would get really big. Because every fucking artist does it. They talk about being the devil, and they talk about like, and I understand that can just be being silly or whatever, but like, I don't really want to say I'm the devil, like I don't want to. And I don't want to do weird pyramids and shit.
Yeah.
And
words have meaning. It's like people are just like, just say it. It's a word. It's like, well, if it means something. It has gravitational weight, even if you don't mean it. If you say that over and over, people listen to it. It does start to have an effect on the way that you walk through life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nice, is it? Like to say it to be, and I'm not like uptight about it. And a lot of artists I listen to, they do a lot of that shit. And I think sometimes they're just being edgy, and sometimes it's just whatever. I don't even care. But like, it feels like it's like a prerequisite to success. And a weird example, Death Grips. Do you know the group Death Grips?
No.
They're an experimental rap group, really amazing group, like, and so weird and perplexing, and the lore behind
Death Grips.
Death Grips, yeah. Okay, like I guess
gotcha.
As in like the grip you have learned over the years from wanking, and it becomes impossible to come from sex. You get like the death grip. And
there you go.
And they're seriously incredible, like the most fascinating group ever, I think. And there's all this lore and bizarre mysteries surrounding them, and it goes. There's like one of those iceberg images, and it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's some seriously weird stuff surrounding this group. And in one of their first big songs, he's talking about like, I am the beast I worship, I drink the blood, whatever. He's saying all this crazy shit, and he talks about a lot of this stuff. And when you really listen to what he's saying, you're like, oh, that's fucking dark. And he says all this crazy shit, the main sort of MC. And I don't necessarily get a bad vibe from them as people, but they say a lot of weird shit. And one of their songs, there's all this weird shit, this numerology shit that happened. One of their songs came out just after the bombing at the Ariana Grande concert. And there's all these bizarre numerical coincidences. I believe it came out, I can't remember exactly. It came out like on the night of it or something. And there's just these really strange coincidences involving the Manchester Arena bombing and the song. And I think some of it has been exaggerated, but some of it is definitely real. And some of it feels impossible to explain as a coincidence. And but I don't think that Death Grips sat there and were like, we know what's going on with this bombing and we're going to make this song that's going to do this or that. But it felt like they were unintentionally channeling something that did know, channeling something that did have access to this information and this weird evil numerology or these coincidences, and all this synchronicity was being pulled together because they were opening themselves up, probably unbeknownst to themselves, to these things. And I've heard other references. Christopher Lee, the actor, Sauron.
Yes, Sauron. Yeah,
Sauron from Lord of the Rings. He's in a lot of other stuff. He had one of the largest occult libraries in the world. And again, I don't think he was a bad guy. I think he's just interested. I think he just had an open mind. He was just intrigued by all of this stuff. But he had one of the largest occult libraries in the world, I believe, or a very large one anyway. And he's dead now. But he lived, I think, really old. He was acting well into his 90s. And he was interviewed about this occult stuff. He was asked about it in an interview. And he said, don't look into the occult. You'll lose a piece of your soul and you'll never get it back. And he looked and sounded very serious when he said this. And he was a smart man. He wasn't a stupid man. He wasn't a trivial man. And he had explored all of this stuff and claimed you would lose a piece of your soul that you would never get back, which is quite crazy. So I think sometimes people, they don't even necessarily have bad intentions. They're curious or they're interested or they find it interesting or funny. And they end up maybe harnessing things that they might not even be that crazy. These ideas, people go, that's ridiculous. What are you saying? They're accessing some demonic power or something. We don't fucking know what's going on. There are things around us that we can't comprehend, quite likely. And I think sometimes people tap into those in some mysterious or hard to understand way. And it's beyond them, and it's beyond even their comprehension.
Yeah. The way that you described that, it's Christopher Lee. Sorry, Christopher Lee. It sounds like he's warning people against incidentally opening a portal that gives the other side, the occult side, access to sort of slowly suck you in further and further. It kind of reminds me of that Nietzsche quote where it's, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, don't stare too long into the abyss before the abyss starts to stare back into you. And I do think there is something to that of even if you start looking into something out of genuine interest, then that interest could devolve into something darker. And whether you realize it or not, if you're just spending hours and hours a day looking into something or someone, that person's psyche, that the idea is also working on you as you're working on it. I don't think you can completely separate something like, you're just brushing off an artifact and it's long dead and, it's only you looking at that saber-toothed tiger's skeleton. Like there's something that is also actively coming back into you when you're working with an idea like that can get its grips on you, and that sounds like what he was sort of warning people about. It does, yeah. It's I'm trying to think of the right word for it. It's not. I forgot what I was going to say, but I remember what I was going to say before that, which is you mentioning doing weird symbolism in your music as an experiment. Sort of satanic symbolism in your music. It would be sort of a fun experiment to have a control group, which is you make music, it's devoid of symbolism. It's basically just like the production and the lyrics. Then you have another version of your music, which is a shit ton of satanic, dark symbolism. And then you have another version, which is heavily God, Christian influenced symbolism, crosses, Jesus all over the place. And then just see and they're all relatively on par music wise. Like the skill and production level is relatively similar. And then see if one of them blows up. Like if the Satanic one just starts fucking climbing up the charts, and you start to get emails from labels and calls and stuff like that. That would be a fun experiment to run.
Yeah, it would. You can almost view Kanye West's discography as a kind of experiment in that, right? Because he went very Christian with Jesus is King, and it was probably where his message became like the most pure, and he seemed in a good place with his spirituality and religion. The album was pretty bad and not one of his most popular ones. His previous albums, which were like fucking sex and like arses and drugs and well, I don't give a fuck and I'm God and stuff, those were huge and they were very good albums. And then the more he got in towards this like purity, the worse the music became. And then again, he's sort of become like filthy again, and it's all like getting sucked off in public and doing weird shit with weird people all the time. And I think he's abandoned any pretense of being Christian at this point, because you can't really maintain that when you're taking your 7-year-old daughter to eat sushi off a naked body. You know, it's just sort of like you're one of them, really, no matter how hard you try not to be.
Yeah. No, and it was weird too how the media treated him around the time where he was just spouting off anti-Semitisms left and right. It was like everyone in the media was acknowledging that there's probably something wrong. He might be going through a mental illness swing. Like something is off about Kanye. Sure, he could all of a sudden start having these anti-Semitic thoughts at 44 years old or whatever he was at the time. But then like people, every big podcast, every big media outlet kept having him on. Like it was like the first hour would be like how irresponsible it is to have Kanye West on the program. He's clearly going through a mental illness problem. And then the next day, Kanye West is doing an interview with Piers Morgan or Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, just like having free reign to spout whatever he wants for 3 hours at a time. So I was like, you got to pick one. Like either he's going through something and he's not fit to be in front of a camera right now, or he's believing what he's saying and he should have a 3-hour public conversation recorded for the public consumption. But you can't like kind of straddle that position. There's really no in between for that.
Yeah. It also, I mean, it felt like the guy promoting Christianity and like suddenly he's also like, saying all this crazy shit and he's everywhere. And it felt to me like a bit of an insult to Christianity and to God and to Jesus. And then you get a lot of these figures, right? A bit like with Andrew Tate, where it's like he's talking about some quite valid ideas about, like in quotes, the Matrix and stuff. But then there's all this shit about running like campsites and doing all of this weird stuff and being a pimp and all this materialism that is not in keeping at all with being anti-Matrix. And it does make you start to sometimes wonder about the concept of controlled opposition, whether that opposition knows it's controlled or not. It feels like, as you mentioned, certain people are pushed in certain directions and certain ideas become, or people like Alex Jones, right? I mean, because like so much of what people like Alex Jones and David Icke say is true, and so much of it is fucking insane, like just absolutely ridiculous bullshit and dangerous. And they infect these good ideas, and then people go, oh, that's like an Alex Jones thing you're talking about. And it's like, yeah, but it's true, And similarly, if you talk about now about the Matrix, everyone's like, oh God, you're an Andrew Tate guy, you're into all this like pimp nonsense and materialism and Ferraris and shit. A lot of these ideas, and I feel like with Kanye as well, it like really denigrated the idea of religion and Jesus by him saying all this other shit and doing all this horrible stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a good segue to get into the Diddy stuff, because it does feel like it has that same sort of like a cult Illuminati aspect to a lot of the allegations that have been thrown around. The legal allegations that are being settled in court are one thing, but then you also have all these celebrities that aren't making official allegations in the legal process that are just saying like really weird shit that would go on at the Diddy white parties, for example. Like that, just just as a reminder, this is sort of like a wrap up of the Diddy allegations that I found online, because there's been a shit ton that's happened since November 23rd. It's always good when you have allegations against you, and then you need articles to conglomerate all of the allegations into one, just to be like, in case you forgot, he also did this.
Well, you know what's mad as well is, even with this list you're about to give of all these allegations, these are ones while he's still out in the open, he's alive, he's not in prison, and people are coming out to say things that they should be maybe afraid to say. Imagine if he was dead or in prison. Imagine the number of stories we would be hearing. If we're hearing 50 stories, like, you know, Dave Chappelle's bit about the man raping men in Houston.
Yes.
He's like, 7 men have come forward, which means he must have raped thousands.
Yes, exactly. The amount of shame and embarrassment it takes for a man to come forward about being raped. Yeah, a hilarious bit. So this is just a summary of everything. So in November 2023, the thing that sort of kicked it all off was the singer Cassie, real name Cassandra Ventura, filed an explosive federal lawsuit against her former partner, Sean Diddy Combs, claiming he had been physically and sexually abusive throughout their relationship. The complaint alleged that Combs' abuse ranged from beating Ventura and forcing her to have sex with other men to raping her at her home in 2018. The rapper settled the lawsuit within 24 hours. But since then, 3 more women and 1 man have sued Combs, accusing him of a wide range of abusive behavior, including sexual harassment, rape, non-consensual pornography, basically recording people without them knowing, sex trafficking allegations. The situation escalated on March 25th, 2024, when federal agents with Homeland Security investigations raided Combs' properties in Miami and Los Angeles simultaneously. Multiple outlets reported that the raids were connected to a federal sex trafficking ring based out of New York. So those are the official allegations. And then on top of that, there's like all these rappers that were huge in the 90s, early 2000s, making these like sort of pseudo pedo homoerotic claims about Diddy, weird shit that was going on at parties. Like, he had the famous white party every year, and there were like 3 or 4 rappers talking about like what would go on in the rooms that weren't being filmed by the photographers and videographers, but they wouldn't get into detail, but like clearly were disturbed by some of the shit that they would see, you know, accidentally walking into the wrong room in Diddy's mansion. What do you make of the whole Diddy situation now that there's been a few months separation from the main allegations and sort of like the deluge of celebrity accusations? What do you make of the whole thing?
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think sometimes like about people like that, like, because again, it's all alleged, right? I don't know what the rules are saying these things, but
it's allegedly, yes. Put a allegedly stamp over this whole
the whole thing,
part of the conversation.
Yeah,
exactly. Legally, Diddy can't destroy my butthole in the back room after this.
But according to allegedly, he has these people, all these assistants who go around with these, like, you know, we call them bum bags. I guess you guys call them fanny packs, that they wear around their waist, and they're just filled at any moment with, like, they call it 2C, which is like fake 2CB, and it's like a mix of all these weird drugs. There's cocaine, there's MDMA, there's benzos, whatever he wants in there. He's got all of these drugs, and meth, I think, and allegedly really into chemsex and all of these kinds of things. And at any moment, he's just like, here, give me my drugs, you know, give me something, whatever. And they come over with this thing, and they give him, and they carry it on planes for him and stuff. And he's on it constantly, and probably has been for a very long time. And to be honest, like, that shit'll turn you into a demon, man. If you look at the DeAntwoord story, you know DeAntwoord? They used to be...
I think I've seen that one.
They're another sort of experimental rap group. Their music is not as good as Def Grips, but their image was very interesting. They were from South Africa, and they were like they had created this style called Ziff, and it's like stuff that's shit, but sick, you know. And it's like the whole thing was, everything was meant to be really shit and like ugly, but in a cool way and whatever. They had this very interesting style. And they were kind of entertaining, but that's not who they were in real life. Previously, they were just like a middle-class couple. I think he came from a fairly wealthy family, I think. And they used to be in a group called Max Normal, and they were totally different. And the Constructors Corporation, they were just like alternative rappers, the kind of nerdy alternative rappers. And at a certain point, they just went fully into this de-antwoord thing. And I guess they were doing a lot of stuff as well. You know, you get the impression that they were doing a lot of drugs. Again, it's all alleged. And there was some freaky shit came out about them, like really freaky shit. And again, a lot of it seems to be tied in with using meth and using amphetamines and methamphetamines and these kinds of drugs, dopaminergic drugs that like get you into this like deranged, horny, degenerate mindset. And sometimes, honestly, like, it sounds terrible to say. I sometimes, on some level, almost feel for these people a little bit, where I'm like, you've gotten so deep into it, you don't even know you're a human being anymore. Like, you've just lost all sense of reality. And I'm not saying we should, as a society, pity them. I'm not in any way condoning or excusing all these horrible things that these people do. There's a part of me is like, some of these people, if they'd stayed sober their entire lives, they probably never would have done any of this shit. And that's still their fault. But they've just become like demonically obsessed with like sex and drugs and power and control and money and abuse. And I think it gets, it amplifies it. It's like an exponential thing. And
yeah,
there seems to be also with some of these people, there seems to be a weird thing. Some people believe that Diddy was recruited by this guy who kind of groomed him and got him into the music business, and basically in exchange for sexual favors. And this guy himself, some people believe, was recruited and kind of groomed by Clive Davis, I believe the guy's name is. And they think that there was this sort of hierarchy of like fucking each other, and that it's almost like this, you know, like bonobo monkeys, like or chimpanzees, they have like a hierarchy of like, they use like rape and fucking as like a punishment and a form of getting forgiveness, and they do all this weird stuff.
I've heard that. Yeah,
they like, if you attack one of them, then afterwards he gets to like fuck you, and it's like a gesture. And I feel that in these circles, particularly when it comes to men, like there seems to be a thing of like, fucking someone, letting them fuck you in the ass is your way of knowing that you have control over them and you've got one over on them and you have power over them. And if someone else did it to you, you have to do it to them. And that's why a lot of these people, I think, are bisexual, because innately maybe they like women, but at some point some guy like dominates them like that, and then they're like, right, whose turn is it? It's like some boarding school shit, you know, where it's like, I got fucked, you're getting fucked, because I'm certainly not letting you fuck me. The boss fucked me, but you're not gonna, because I'm your boss. And I get that.
And then you throw a shit ton of drugs into that mix too, and like that's just lubrication for deviant sexual activity. You know, like things you normally wouldn't be open to. You're like, yeah, fuck it, like let's do it. Pull out the fanny pack. We'll go in the back room here at this, you know, the white party or whatever, allegedly wherever this stuff was happening. There is the celebritization of it and the access that having $1 billion or whatever Diddy was worth, that that can only like not just in a financial side of it, where like he has the finances to keep these schemes going with the houses and the parties and all like the material wealth to keep people interested in coming back to a Diddy party. Because again, like these rumors were floating around for years, but apparently these parties were so sick that, you know, and you want to get close to celebrities, you're just willing to take that risk anyway. You're like, whatever, like probably chances are it's probably not going to happen to me, so I will go party on this yacht or go party on this Miami oceanside estate. But then when you look at the wealth that it also takes to keep you physically healthy and keep people to stop asking questions, because if me or you were to just like devolve into just like complete drugged out sex fueled states for decades at a time, we'd probably look like fucking like cracked out vampires. Like we wouldn't have the resources to, you know, have fucking like constant massages and all these high-end products and Botox and like all the shit that Diddy does to keep it going. So I think that aspect is interesting too, of like, not only is he allegedly doing all this shit, but it's not really showing on him physically. And you wonder like how much work that requires as your soul is devolving to keep you physically intact. Because usually they go hand in hand. Like if your soul starts to devolve, like the body will follow and you'll just look like complete shit. But then you have all this access and all this wealth to cover it up.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, a lot of the time, probably if you could see what they really look like, really what they should
like
look
mask.
like, it's like
yeah.
The funny thing about that is, do you know about his obsession with the Joker?
Diddy's obsession with the Joker? No,
Yeah,
I didn't know about
look
that.
up videos after this. He's sort of obsessed with the Joker, and there's these videos of him as the Joker, and a lot of the comments say the same thing. Like, he seems so much more himself as the Joker, and he comes alive when he's dressed as a Joker, and he's in this really good, convincing Joker costume, and he's going around the streets, and he's getting into arguments with people, and he's like terrorizing people, and you can see he loves it, and he loves the idea that the Joker just represents like chaos and like madness, and he's just gone, mentally, like he's gone. And he also likes Billy the clown from Jigsaw and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he gets very into it in this way that's very strange. And he's a very a very damaged human being.
Yeah. If the first thing that comes up if you search Diddy Joker is Warner Bros. Bans Diddy from dressing up as the Joker. Yeah. Apparently he was doing it so much that they're like, can you wear some fucking normal clothes, please? Could you stop putting on makeup every morning and fucking...
They're like, can you stop besmirching our character that we own the rights to?
Yeah,
we
exactly.
don't want to associate it with like bum sex, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. The Joker's done a lot of stuff, but he's not a pedo. So can you please, can you please take that off? I think there is something to the soul or the personality matching the outwards expression, the clothing, the makeup and the stuff like that. Like you sort of rise or fall to it. And I've never had the sort of like, full blown swings that Diddy allegedly has been having, but I did dress up as a Joker for one Halloween, and just in my head, I was like, it would be kind of fun to walk through cars as they're driving down the street, kind of like that scene in the movie. And I was also a little bit drunk too, but I don't think I definitely wouldn't have done that if I wasn't dressed as a Joker. Like I just started walking through cars. I looked into a couple cars and all of a sudden I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like I can't walk down the middle of fucking 4th Avenue in New York City trying to creep people out by staring into their car. But the character, like putting on all that makeup and watching it, like going through 5 YouTube tutorials and putting it on in the mirror to the point where you're unrecognizable. And then I'm putting on the clothes and like all this stuff. And then people constantly asking you like, can I get a picture of you on the subway dressed as the Joker? Because I guess people thought it was particularly good, or like I'd done a decent job. So like, can we get that photo of you kind of like swinging around the pole? Like in the movie, and I'm just doing it. I'm like, this is actually kind of fun, like getting into the character. But if I did that every day, or if I did that a lot, it would definitely start to overtake at least a portion of my personality.
It's powerful, isn't it? And that makes you wonder, right? Like about your real identity, like how much of that is, I know this is a bit like, I'm 13 and very deep, but like how much of your real identity is you're like playing the Zach character every day, and you've got a set of ideas about who Zach is, and that makes you do certain things. And then when you switch that to the Joker, you change those ideas about what you should do. And people, I think it probably explains a lot of the crazy behavior of a lot of these. Myself, like when I was younger, I used to think like, I'm fucked up, I'm like crazy and fucked up and twisted, because all my favorite artists were like that, and I was a bit, and that identity I had of myself, it definitely led me to do certain things and to behave in a certain way that like, it wasn't really me, and I wasn't really comfortable with it. but I just had in my mind, like, I'm a twisted clown. I'm a fucking weirdo. I'm fucked up. And like, it just, your identity informs so much of your behavior. Your behavior informs your identity, but of course, yeah, it goes both ways significantly.
Yeah. I've had that experience when I was in college, my freshman year. The style at Richmond, where I was going to school down in Virginia, is very preppy, fratty, Vineyard Vines. Like that was the male style. And so I bought those clothes and wore them for pretty much all of my freshman year. And I didn't really get any girls. I didn't have any confidence. And I also just felt like kind of not like I guess the being tied to like the frat identity for whatever reason didn't work for me. And then one day, I remember the day because I went to get a haircut with my friend, and I particularly liked his haircut. I'd always had like a sloppy mop on top, like not styled at all. And then I went to get it like a fade with a comb over, almost kind of like a modern, what do you call it? Like a modern mullet with the shaved sides. And then I got a black t-shirt, black jeans, and combat boots. Like we went into the store right next to it, and I was like, I'm just gonna go to the fucking like sale rack and get an outfit that I think I'll actually like for tonight. And then within 2 months, I had gotten so much more attention from college girls, which isn't saying a lot, but I was getting zero my freshman year. And I sort of like embodied like this dapper knockoff Chris Hemsworth type character where I'm like, oh, this is like, I feel more attractive. I feel more powerful. And like, I sort of became a version of that where I would go out and I would take off like all my dirty baseball shit or whatever I was wearing during the day. And then I would put on jeans and combat boots and I'd be like, this guy has arrived. Like, time to fucking slay some pussy. I am I am in the uniform for pussy slaying. Let's go out. And I wouldn't have done that, I don't think, if I just kept wearing like the same frat clothes that I wasn't really comfortable with in my own skin.
It's amazing, isn't it, how long you can persist with the stuff that you're not comfortable with as well without realizing it. And then when you find a way of being that is comfortable, you're like, oh yeah, that's how it feels. Like when me and my girlfriend, we split up for like a year or so, and I was having a really bad time, and I started wearing like really like tight t-shirts and stuff, like trying to impress women. And I was like dressing like a dick, and I was like, it radiated like I was trying, and like really, like I'm in like all right shape, not great. That's not what's gonna do it for me. Do you know what I mean? But I was so insecure as well. I thought like, this is all I have. Like I have to show that I'm in like okay shape, and like I have to like stand upright and shit. And I was acting like a dick. And at a certain point, I was like, I hate being dressed like this. Every time I go out, I feel like an idiot. And I've buried this information somehow, and now I'm just suddenly realizing like I feel awful all the time. Every time I'm outside, I'm self-conscious because I'm just being someone who I'm not. And but you can do that. I used to do it for years. I used to go to like clothes shops and I'd like buy stuff I hated, and I just sort of like hated all the time. I hated like how I was dressed and how I was being, and my own behavior even. Like same thing with behavior. And then now, that's the thing I like most about being older is I'm much better at like only doing things that I feel are right, going off like a gut feeling on things. And that to me it makes your life so much better when you go towards what you are naturally comfortable with, and what you feel deep down is the right thing for you to do, or the right way for you to be. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. It makes you wonder when you see something like the Met Gala. You do see like just a lot of weird dresses or imagery and sometimes borderline satanic styles. And are these like, is part of the way that celebrities get off on the Met Gala is that they have an excuse to wear that out in the open? Like you can just be your fucking true self, and it's not weird because the Met Gala has this theme that you're supposed to dress weird. But meanwhile, it's like that is more representative of a lot of these celebrities' personalities than the things that they wear day to day because they're sort of trying to cover something up.
Yeah, they wear some freaky shit.
So we discussed a question in the chat that would be interesting to answer, and that is, would you have sucked off Diddy for fame and money? Do you think there's any point in your life where if Diddy walked in, maybe he's in his white gala clothes, maybe he's in the Joker costume, who the fuck knows, and he said, "Get down on your knees. If you do this, if you take what I'm about to give you from my fanny pack," just the image of like someone whipping their cock out with a fanny pack dressed as the Joker, and says, "If you do this, all your dreams and wishes will come true. I'll guide you to the same success that I have right now." Do you think there's any point in your life where you would have accepted that, or would have been like, "All right, I got to go to the bathroom and genuinely think about this offer"? Like, it's not a hard no.
I was talking about this with my girlfriend. Like, for fame and success, definitely not. No, like, and I think part of that is because I wouldn't want to achieve it in that way, you know, like in the same way, like I would never want, for example, to like pay for success. I'd never want like someone to like, you know, you hear about these people, like some artists where like they have like mega rich parents and stuff, and they basically just buy their way into the music industry. That's probably about half the music industry now. The new artists are people who they're either like drug dealers with loads of disposable income, or they're just super rich kids. Basically, there's no like middle class in music anymore. And I wouldn't want that either. And I feel like I've always backed myself to be successful, and I've always had some level of pride in like, I want to do things, I want to do it for myself and like know that I've accomplished something. So for that, no. But I wonder, as there are times in my life where if it meant I could have sex with lots of hot women, like I might have done it. To be honest, if it started off where he's like, "Look, we got these like Latina girls, these Asian girls, other girls, you know, all these different girls you can sleep with," and I start off already like I'm getting like blowies because I was not having a lot of sex when I was a teenager, and I'm getting, you know, they're like sucking me off and stuff, and I'm having the time of my life. I'm going to these parties, I'm doing drugs, you know, because that was another easy way to get me hooked. And then after like a month of this, you know, he's like, "Look, you can't really hang around here anymore because, you know, I'm not getting it. You're not upholding your end of the bargain."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What's my
you got to
end
return
of
the favor.
He's like, "You got to return the favor." I think, I don't know, because at that age I would have been so disgusted by the idea of sucking a cock like that. I don't know. No, I don't know. I think maybe at that age I'd had like some gay thoughts and like experimentation within my own mind, you know. So actually, no, yeah, I don't think I even was that horrified by that then. So yeah, I think maybe at that age, to be honest, when I was really young, like I think my desperation for sex and drugs and stuff would have been a lot more likely to lead me down that path than fame. I'd like to think I would have just said no. We'd all like to think we would have said no, and we never would have been there in the first place. But I think we're all lucky to have not been invited.
Yeah, I think people always describe it like the way that I described it is what people will present the question as, is if Diddy walked into a room and he whipped out his cock and said, "Get on your knees and suck it and you'll have fame, success, and women, would you do it?" Most people would probably say no, or they at least think about it and then say no. But if it's more like what you're describing, where he gives you a taste first, and maybe he even does it as part of some sort of orgy, allegedly, where it's like you're just, you know, you're in the middle of eating two girls' pussies and you're fucking another one, and all of a sudden, like you're drugged up, you're on meth, Molly, alcohol, like everything, cocaine, and then all of a sudden, like one of those vaginas just happens to be Diddy's cock, and he's like, "Suck my cock," and this can continue. And you're like fucking like railing out some other fucking music star from behind, and there's naked women all around you. I feel like if you're going to do it, the first time you do it, you have to sort of like ease it into that person's life, especially if you're a straight male, to like almost present it as like, oh, it's just a part of the orgy. It's just a part of like all this fame, money, success, bitches. And then like once you do that, then like the next time he does it, he's like, "Well, you did it on Saturday night. Like, what's the difference between doing that with a ton of girls around and like doing it on Tuesday before I eat my Captain Crunch?" It's like you sort of like open the door into
and then
it.
it becomes, sorry, go on.
I know. I was just gonna say, if you put me in a time machine and I was back at 19 years old, where I was at the peak of my baseball career, like 19, 20 years old, all I cared about was baseball and bitches. And that situation occurred where I somehow made it to a Diddy party as a college baseball player, surrounded by all these celebrities, and like I'm in a room and I'm just like, completely maniacally obsessed by everything going on around me. And then all of a sudden, Diddy's cock appears in front of my face, and he's like, "You can have all this whenever you want, and you're also going to become a Major League Baseball player and have a very long career in the major leagues." I'd be like, fuck, like it's just I probably like you'd just be looking at it, looking back to the girls, and like looking back to the dick, and looking back. You're like, God damn, like this is. I honestly don't know what I would have done in that moment, like with that build up to it, and being 20 years old, with feeling like I need to become a Major League Baseball player and get girls, or I'm not gonna survive. Be a really tough decision. Very, very tough for sure.
And what you described about it starting off like where it's around the girls and you're like, stuff, who cares? Yeah,
just a cock in a sea of pussy. Yeah,
like they're the same. It's just inside out cock is a pussy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he says. He's like, it's just an inside out pussy
that's come outwards. It's fine. It's the same material as a pussy, and you're like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he's like, stop being so material. Stop being so materialistic. It's all the same thing.
You would, and then you do it then, and then, like we're discussing earlier, it would begin to inform your identity, right? You'd be like, I'm Zach. Who gives a fuck? I suck cock sometimes. I like women. I like cock. And then suddenly,
I'm crazy.
Yeah, I'm
part
crazy.
of my identity now. I'll put whatever you want in front of my face, and I'll suck it.
Yeah. And then someone else confronts you about it. They're like, I heard you suck Diddy's cock, and you're like, yeah, I fucking suck cock.
Yeah.
And then it more and more reinforces this idea. And then you're like, maybe I want a man to suck my cock. And then you're like, suddenly.
Exactly. I got to recruit my own. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to tell Diddy what I did the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing, it's like, it gets to a point where there's so many allegations that pile up and just so many of these celebrity rumors that accumulate. It would be weird if none of it was true. Like almost certainly 10% of it is true. And like you said, if Diddy was dead or if Diddy was in jail, how many celebrities would come out and speak more openly about exactly what was going on those parties, or like exactly what was happening, or didn't feel this level of protection over Diddy or fear from Diddy because he's still able to, maneuver and have some power in the industry.
Yeah. Also, things that we forgot to, he's also implicated allegedly in both Tupac and Biggie's deaths, and the death of his first wife, I think, new boyfriend, who was very paranoid that people were following him shortly before he died. A lot of mysterious deaths.
Yeah.
That question about Diddy, there was another question I wanted to ask you. Do you think, are you ever grateful when you hear all these stories about all these different bands and singers and the weird shit they did? Are you ever grateful that you weren't just mega famous in the 60s? Because sometimes I hear about all the shit they did and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we all judge them now and we look back and we're like, you're disgusting. How could you do all this stuff?
Yeah.
And it's like the world wasn't giving them that message back then. That message just wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't know. See, my thoughts tend to go towards the opposite side of it, which is, if I was going to be famous, I would rather have it be in the 60s and 70s than now, just because everything is filmed. People constantly have their phones out. Even if you're not doing something fucked up or crazy, like even if you're just like Mick Jagger drinking in a bar and you're not, fucking 16-year-old girls, not that Mick Jagger was doing that, but even if it's just him, allegedly,
allegedly he wasn't.
Allegedly he wasn't. But to just be a figure like Mick Jagger and to sit in a bar and not be surrounded by phones and just sort of hang out at a local pub in the UK and there's still obviously he's Mick Jagger, but it's not to the point where it's like people are dropping pins and are like, someone tweets out his location and then like everyone's there. It's like you could still have some semblance of a humanity as that sort of figure 40, 50 years ago, whereas now it's like you hear all these stories about things happening in mansions and like behind closed doors, and it's like, well, where else would they happen? Like these celebrities, and again, not to victimize the celebrities, because I don't see figures like Diddy as victims whatsoever, but like these mansions, these gilded walls become traps, because once you step outside those walls, if you do anything, it's going to be on Twitter, TikTok in 30 seconds, like fan interaction. You walk outside with your pants hanging below your ass, or just a small thing, you become trapped. So if I wouldn't say I feel, I don't feel grateful to not be famous during the 60s and 70s. I'm sure that comes with its own set of, shitty cards and all the shit that comes along with that. But if I were to be that level, I would definitely want to, be at least back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, somewhere before the 90s when phones started to come into play, just to like appreciate the presence of it all more.
Yeah, they could then though, right? But I feel like every single one of them now is just shitting themselves every day that they're going to like. I feel the ones who haven't been outed for something inappropriate they did, it's just because they haven't been outed. It's not because they didn't do it. Because like Russell Brand,
do you think someone like Mick? Oh,
sorry, no, please go ahead.
I was going to say, like, do you think someone like Mick Jagger, who's still alive and also fully lived through, 3 decades with peak celebrity, touring with the original Rolling Stones band, do you think he gives much thought to being caught nowadays for something fucked up he did back in the day?
I think some people also who are like crazy powerful, they have that invincibility mindset, right? You hear it about drug barons and stuff. They just think they'll never get caught. So maybe some people that protects them, their ego protects them. But like, if you were normal, I got the feeling, to be honest, that David Bowie regretted a lot of his choices. And as he got older, perhaps to some degree, he was the timing of his death might have been somewhat fortuitous on a personal level for him.
Yeah.
And I think because there was quite a lot of stuff about him that never really became a big deal. And all of them seem to have it floating around. And I often think, like, with Russell Brand, I feel part of the reason there's all that stuff about him is because he just had sex with so many women. And it's very hard, like, nowadays to... I feel like for famous people now, like, even just having sex like once with a normal person is a really big deal. Whereas it used to be... Jack Nicholson apparently used to have sex sometimes with 3 or 4 different women a day. He would just like see them and be like, come here and have sex with me. Like, and they just would, and it was like, he could just be like, I want a woman. And he would just have sex with them. Like, it was crazy. And it was
it's like bottles of shampoo. I'll take the Head and Shoulders.
Yeah, it was just literally, and it was, then they just sort of disappeared into life's tapestry and it all just kind of happened in the moment. But now it's like, you see these weird things like James Franco messaging some woman to try and meet at his hotel, and the pictures are in the Daily Mail and everyone's seeing it. And it's like, he was just trying to fuck once and it was like a big thing. But I feel like if someone has sex with thousands of different people, it's almost impossible for there to not be at least some kind of perceived wrongdoing in amongst that, and something that could be presented as wrongdoing. Of course, a lot of time has passed, but there must be individual instances where they were like really drunk or coked up and then thinking, was I horrible to that woman? Was she fully awake? Or how old was she? Or like, was she like married? I guess no one cares if it's cheating, right? No one cares if she's married, but whatever it was, there's some aspect to this situation. And there must be in so many of them, so many gray areas, because it's literally impossible that they had sex with thousands of women and every single one of those situations was like a straight down the line, normal, completely level-headed, consensual, completely non-questionable activity, because casual sex doesn't really work like that. And based on probability, all of them did some shit that in this day and age could be and perhaps most of the time should be like interpreted as wrong. So I feel like if they have the capacity for paranoia over that, like Jimmy Page, right? And I think Brian, maybe I don't want to lump him in with, but Jimmy Page allegedly had a girlfriend who was very young, and a lot of them did. A lot of them had really young girlfriends. Steven Tyler as well. And how can they not now be thinking, oh my God, I hope no one ever brings this up. Like, that would be so bad. And how has no one brought this up yet? And every time they get like a phone call or something, they must be like, oh my God, is this it? Is this an anonymous number's ringing me? Is this like the New York Times or something? Like, it must be really bad.
Or even to be just present in the moment, having sex with someone, like if you're Russell Brand, if he was single and still going out and, having sex, even, being sober where you have more of your wits about you, I would still be paranoid in the moment of like, is this girl, like, is she a reporter? Like, is she taking photos of my stuff when I take a shit? Like, what, like, is she going to take a picture of me when I'm asleep? Like, you can't even enjoy sex, I feel like, in a lot of situations, like, let alone the repercussions that could come months or years after. But like the act of it where you're, railing out someone from behind and you see her phone, like a text pop up and you're like, oh, did she like send a picture of my place? So, like, all the paranoia inside your head must be crazy.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
I feel in a way all these downsides of casual sex are probably a good thing. Like, and I feel, I didn't see it that way when I was younger. Like, I just thought, like, again, I had this like nihilistic view on everything. And I feel now like a lot of the over the top kind of crazy shit that's gone on publicly around a lot of it, I think ultimately is kind of good. In a way, it's a deterrent from engaging in what is, like, I think generally a pretty bad practice, like casual sex, one night stands and stuff. I know a lot of the time it's fine, it's just fun or whatever, but there's so many downsides and so many issues with it. I feel like probably people slowly learning that and moving away from it is in some ways a good thing. It's unfortunate that impact is hitting some people much harder than others, and some people are having the best time ever, and then some people are like lonelier than ever. But I do feel like probably the fact that we're all realizing that maybe all this casual rampant sex is a bit of a poison chalice might be a good thing.
Nowadays it does feel like a bit of a cheat code to be in a monogamous relationship.
Yes.
The past 3 years, the past three and a half years now that I've been with my girlfriend, a lot of the problems that I'll hear from friends or acquaintances or just things in the media have to do with the casual lifestyle. And just being in a monogamous relationship, being with one person, it's like there's so much things that I don't even think about until I hear it mentioned or someone mentions it to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those stresses. Like, I remember, wondering, being drunk and like accidentally texting the wrong girl, or waking up and being like, fuck, I gotta go get tested today. Like, I was a fucking idiot last, like, these things.
Is she pregnant?
Yeah, she's pregnant. Yeah, exactly. Do I have a fucking kid? But or, you try to impress someone and you drop $400 blacked out, and you see the charge the next morning, and you're like, fuck, like, all this stuff that I haven't had on my mind in almost 4 years now. It does feel like a bit of a cheat code being in that situation.
Yeah, as a man particularly, right? Because now it's like two people go out drinking, a man and a woman, they have a few beers, they have sex, the man's a rapist. It's mad. I mean, and shit like that, yeah, you don't have to think about it. You can have a few drinks with your girlfriend and no one's, the thought police aren't there, like not the thought police, the rape police.
Yeah.
But it is mad. Sometimes
Sorry. I was going to say, if she accuses me of rape, it's part of the role play.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it after.
Yeah, I sometimes I'll read like a text from one of my like single friends or something. And yeah, some of the stuff they talk about, you're like, Jesus, that's like terrible. That just sounds awful. It would be like, I went out and then she was really weird and we didn't fuck, so like I had a wank in the car or something. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to live that lifestyle at all. It sounds, really bad. Really, really bad.
The single horny mind is a drug on its own.
Yes.
I wanted to get into the Leah Betts stuff that we spoke about before, and I used my willpower. I did not even Google the name Leah Betts since we spoke about it. I deleted everyone named Leah from my phone just in case. I'm just gonna take a piss real quick and grab some coffee, and I'll be right back.
Sure. We'll finish on Leah Betts.
All right. So who the hell is Leah Betts? Leah Betts.
Leah Betts. So Leah Betts was an 18-year-old girl in the UK who died after taking an ecstasy tablet. And it was a very famous case. It was used in a lot of... I've sent you an image in the chat. You can see a famous image of her in hospital in a coma with lots of tubes hooked up to everything. And it was a very famous case. And we were shown videos about it at school. And it was used as part of the kind of Just Say No campaigns and this sorted campaign. It was just like one ecstasy tablet killed Leah Betts. And it was used to push this agenda of like, don't take drugs, they'll kill you. And this weird, meaningless distinction between drugs and alcohol. So anyway, a detail they kind of glossed over a little bit when they told the story of Leah Betts was that she drank approximately 7 liters of water in a 90-minute period.
Oh God!
7 liters.
While she was on the ecstasy tablet.
Yes, while she was on the ecstasy, and she wasn't dancing, she wasn't raving.
So that's like almost 2 gallons, I think. Like 2 of the most massive jugs you can buy in America.
Coke bottles. Those are 2 liters. The big sharing family size ones. So imagine those are filled with water, right? And imagine in half an hour you drink one of those in 30 minutes. One of those 2-liter bottles, you're going to be like, well, fuck me, I've had too much water. This is bad. Then another 30 minutes go by, you drink another one of those in 30 minutes. That's a lot, man. And then another 30 minutes go by, you drink another one. And then across that time, we're throwing in another liter as well. So it's like, I guess, like 1.3 liters every 30 minutes. No, 2.3 liters every 30 minutes. So it's a huge amount of water, right? And they kind of gloss over this detail. The water was actually what killed her. She died from internal drowning. Her brain swelled up because she drank so much water.
Oh, damn.
And they never mentioned this part. And they constantly said, 1 ecstasy tablet killed her, so you should never take ecstasy, because if you do, you might also drink 7 liters of water.
Yeah.
Die, which is insane, and it was a very successful campaign. Lots of people said, I didn't take ecstasy because of this, and it was using this poster campaign, and the company that did these posters, they also worked for advertising for, I don't know how you say it, Lions Brew, Lowenbroth, this German beer company. Yeah. And they also worked for Red Bull. And alcohol companies pushed a lot of this anti-drug stuff because ecstasy was seen as a competition for alcohol. It was. People were going on nights out and they weren't drinking a drop of alcohol because they were having ecstasy. And similarly, Red Bull was the other end of it chronologically. Red Bull was the thing that followed MDMA and was like, don't take MDMA, instead switch to this. So at either end, you had these 2 competing kind of substances that wanted.
Red Bull marketed themselves as the alternative to MDMA.
Yeah,
at one point,
and they still do. They still do. There's a lot of sometimes clever and sometimes not so clever marketing for energy drinks as being an alternative to drugs. And in fairness, I mean, the rampant energy drink culture is really bad, but on a night out, compared to taking like dirty pills of some shifty dealer or drinking a few too many Rockstar energy drinks, both are going to be probably bad for your heart, but at least you're a lot less likely to die from the energy drinks. And if you do,
that's also,
quite frankly, you're a fucking idiot and you've drank way too many.
Yeah, that's also a good example of from the marketing aspect of it, how much more interesting and relatable European marketing is to the average consumer than like the weirdly puritanical American marketing. Like there's no way it could ever be on a billboard where it's like, thinking about taking MDMA, have a Red Bull instead. But there's so many like very sexual commercials or drug alcohol commercials that I'll see in Europe or Asia that they're funny and they're relatable, but it would never fly in the US, and I quite enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, well, they did, yeah, they explicitly did it, and they also subtly did it, and they tried to get energy drinks a lot into music videos and into like rave shots and things like this, and they tried to promote it as a thing you take to go crazy at a party. Which caffeine, I mean, it's not really a buzz, is it? It's just stimulation. It's not really like a buzz, but anyway.
Yeah.
And the Sorted campaign, which used a picture of her in a coma, was, some people feel, inadvertently an advertisement for alcohol or Red Bull, because they weren't saying this can happen to you full stop from substances, from alcohol, from ecstasy, you know, all sorts of things can go wrong. They were saying drugs are bad, which I think kind of essentially means drink alcohol instead, take something legal instead, which alcohol is, you know, terrible as well in so many ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was used for that. And anyway, so I have here 8 liters of water, which you can see is a lot.
Goddamn.
For my head to scale, this is like a lot of water.
It's about 3 Diddy cocks.
Yeah, it's big, man. It's huge.
Yeah.
So, as an AUXORO Podcast exclusive, I am now going to attempt to break Leah Betts' record and drink.
Let's go. Are you also on Molly too, to make it fair to her?
I'm not. I was like 2 weeks ago. So
okay.
So maybe there's some residual effects. So I'd like you to set a timer. I'm going to attempt to drink this 8 liters in 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do it. Timer.
Okay.
Oh, wow. It started at 5 minutes.
I'm not actually going to drink 8 liters of water in 5 minutes. And I can't believe you put the timer on. And I can't believe you were going to let me do this. I would die. You were about to watch me kill myself on your show.
This is my entrance to the satanic side of podcast media.
This was your blood sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to let a guest die to get the 2 million TikTok views that it would be of him gargling on the ground, going like, only 1 liter left. Yeah. And I'm just like, yes, bring on the occult.
I'm really curious to know how far that would have gone. Because I feel once you watched it get down, you would have... How far do you think it would have gone?
So I didn't know if this was a pre-planned bit or not. So I'd probably let it go for like 30 seconds to see like if you would pretend to gurgle or die. But I would say after like 30 seconds, I'd be like, all right, just in terms of podcast content, this isn't great. If you're going to kill yourself, you have to do it in a more audio friendly manner. So I'm going to need, and I'll do it as well. Maybe that's how we'll both go out. We'll record an episode and we'll just end it with a bang, literally. So, but I wouldn't have let you go past the point of no return for sure. I would have
because it could snowball, like, because you see me and I'm doing it and you're like, oh, he's joking, he's going to drink some of it for a laugh. And then if I'm a really quick drinker and it gets down to like halfway and I've had 4 liters, you're kind of like, he's clearly in control here. Like, I'm not his dad, you know, how can I stop him? And then you're just, you're culpable. You're watching a man die. And it goes to show how, we can judge her friends and say, how did they let her drink 7 liters of water in 90 minutes? You can see how, right? You know, shit happened.
I was actually talking about that with another guest the other day, where she had made a joke about like, oh, you know, if you got murdered on like the podcast right now, if someone came in your door and just like started slashing you, like that would be, you know, it'd be terrible, and like all this stuff. And then we both realized that like we each couldn't do shit. If she got murdered or I got murdered, you're just watching someone get murdered. And so it's like the most like meta future, like it feels like a Black Mirror episode where it's like, yeah, you could call the cops, they'll get there, you know, 20-30 minutes later, depending on.
I wouldn't know what to say. I'd be like, it's Zach from the AUXORO podcast.
He's somewhere in Panama.
He's in Panama. I think. Is this the Panama police? They're like, ¿qué?
Yeah, ¿qué? ¿Cómo? But yeah, I would say I'd let it go for like 30 seconds just to see like where, like if it was going to turn into, like if you had more to the bit. But if 30 seconds went by and you still chug it, I'd be like, you're good. I believe you. You know.
Yeah, I mean, people die. You'd be surprised. People have died from like 3 liters before. I think those are unusual circumstances, but people have died from quite small amounts. And I guess you've heard about like the radio competition where that woman died. They did a competition on the radio. I mean, like you say, it's not very audio friendly, but they did it on the radio, and it was to see who could drink the most water in a certain amount of time. And this woman just died on air. And it happens quite a lot. People die from drinking too much water. So even if I got probably halfway through that 8 liters, I could have died because I've already been sipping this one throughout the thing.
There you go.
I already feel like I've had too much water, and I've had about 500 ml. So that would have been, 16 times that, which is bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers.
Did the Leah Betts thing? Did people know from the beginning when she died that she had also drank water, or was it a huge period of time that went by and then it came out that, oh, by the way, she also drowned to death?
No, they did mention it, but that information is lost on you when you're a kid. And they're like, she took the ecstasy and then she drank lots of water and she couldn't go to the toilet. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it stops you from pissing a bit. It doesn't fully block up. It doesn't like weld your bladder shut. And also, if you don't drink 7 liters, it doesn't really matter. And at the end of the day, if you drank 7 liters in 90 minutes, even if you weren't on ecstasy, you could definitely die from that. It's really dangerous to do that. And so the ecstasy is pretty much completely irrelevant. It would be like, I don't know what to compare it to, but it's absurd, I think, to blame the ecstasy. And she had taken ecstasy before a number of times, and it's probably inadvertently, and I'm not meaning to, I understand that the parents meant well and they were just horrified by the death of their daughter and they thought, we have to stamp this out. And they stood up for what they believed in, and they stood up to a lot of like abuse for it and antagonism. But I feel that inadvertently that kind of stuff probably causes more deaths than it prevents. It causes more harm in the long run. Like I'd say it's probably caused a lot more harm to the kind of young people they've tried to help than more nuanced forms of education and telling people, if you're going to do this, fucking don't be an idiot. Like test things. Don't drink 7 liters of water in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't like go crazy dancing and drink loads of caffeine with it or you'll have a heart attack. Don't overheat or you'll fuck your brain up. Don't do it more than once every few months. And I know that this stuff is a bit weird because it verges on encouraging it. And I do understand why people have a problem with it. It's like with sex education, right? Like you can tell people about safe sex and then it gets to a point where now they're like showing 11-year-olds how to put condoms and bananas and you're like, nah, like just don't tell them anything. It's better for a few of them to slip through the cracks and maybe do it wrong than to tell all of them about sex. It just feels a bit.
Yeah.
And I get that with drugs. Like you can't go around being like, here's a leaflet on how to smoke weed, because it's just kind of crazy. But telling people no, just don't do it, and that's it. That is like draconian and insane, and it kills people, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have to get your own information and a lot of like I wonder how much of her drinking the 7 liters was genuine thirst from the Molly, or she had just heard that it's good to drink water when you're on Molly, and maybe she was in some anxiety cycle of, I'm gonna die if I don't drink water. Like I've heard you could die if you don't drink water on Molly. Then like she ended up killing herself from drinking too much water on Molly.
Yeah, it's like driving, right? Like if everyone told you can't drive, you're not allowed to drive, but you were able to get access to a car and you were able to drive and you'd had like no education about how to drive, you'd be like, fuck this, let me drive a car. I'm going to fucking drive down the street. And you just kill a child and you're like, oh, no one told me. All they did was tell me not to drive. I just wanted to be like everyone else,
Yeah, I just wanted to be like Jason Statham in the movies. And it's a lot harder. It turns out it's not even Jason Statham driving. It's some other bald guy that looks like him.
It's me, dude.
Exactly. I mean, if you were the stunt double for Jason Statham and you didn't bring that up on the podcast, that would be worse than me letting you die from drinking too much water.
I didn't tell you in advance as a topic to,
Yeah, I'd be like, what was it like driving through the, Musée d'Orsay in Transporter 2 and you didn't bring that up? I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be bad. That would be a big oversight. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to. Oh, by the way, I saw you reminded me because you said you took MDMA 2 weeks ago, and I also saw part of a video that you put out about a bad MDMA experience, or at least that was the title. Is that the same experience? The video from a few days ago
Yeah, we
about
hadn't done it for like 4 years or years. I don't know. It'd been years since we'd last done it. We used to abuse it like heavily, really, really bad. And that's part of why I feel a bit strongly about the stuff, because it can get so dark, that stuff. And I've seen a very, very out of control drug culture in the UK. And I know that stuff like these Leah Betts Just Say No campaigns, they just bounce off your fucking head like that. And those kinds of people, the people I know who were worse, who were staying up for like 3 or 4 days, just fucking their brains up for life, just destroying their receptors and shit. And sometimes it can be almost a fate worse than death, to be honest, for some of those people. The way that people get from it is so bad and so tragic to be around. And anyway, yeah, we were really out of control with it, and it had a very bad effect on our lives and on our brains. And we stopped for years. I feel, though, that used responsibly, I feel it's a really powerful and good substance. And we for years we didn't want to do it again. And then we thought, like, we're adults now, and we're a lot more mature, and we're definitely not going to abuse it. So we took it again after like 4 years, and it was really good. We had an amazing time. The after effects were very minimal. It was really good. And we had a little bit left, and we thought, like, it's only a very small amount left because we've done most of it, and it's going to be too hot to do it soon. It's not good to do it in the sun. It cooks your brain, and it's better to do it. So we just thought, we'll do this, and then we won't do it again for like a year. We weren't even being fiendish. It was like, we've got this, we're planning our weekends, we'll get this one out of the way, and then we'll just do shrooms or whatever next time. And it wasn't even like, there wasn't a desperation. It wasn't an addict's mindset at all. It was just stupid. We thought, well, it was great last time, so we'll do it again like a month later. And it was really bad, and so many of the bad effects came back. And just after one extra usage of it, all of these symptoms,
and there was a month in between.
And we used to do it sometimes at the weekend, 1 week
back-to-back
after.
weekends,
yeah. And that shit, like, it was eye-opening, because I look back and I'm like, man, we were so damaged from that, and so broken and suffering mentally, and our personalities. And that's why I said and mentioned, sometimes I see these people who are on drugs 24/7, and I think, like, that's not really who they are. And it's their fault, it's their choice, you have to make them responsible, but it's not really who they are. Like the people who are taking all this meth and shit, doing like crazy things, like, and MDMA, it doesn't have that kind of effect on you, but the kind of person you become, and the negativity and the depression and the anger and all this shit and the dysfunction, you think that that's who you are. You start to just think that's who you are as a person, and that if anything, the drugs are helping you. And it was really interesting in a way to be like, wow, man, like, we used to live like this, like, because it happened the other day or a week or two ago, and we were like, right, it's going to be if we do it again, 6 months or so, and a lot more preparation, do all of these supplements leading up to it, and definitely not 1 month after the other, and probably wait a very long time before doing it again, if ever. But back then we would just compound the problem by doing it more and more and more, and it gets really bad, and you don't have anyone to really listen to, who can tell you, like, I can see what you're doing, and I know what you're doing because I did it, and it's bad, and it's, I promise you that it doesn't have to be like this, and whatever. So it was fine, really, but yeah, for a couple of days felt fucking awful, and it reminded me of being that age, and it reminded me of what a bad state you can get into. And
and you said it was a smaller amount too the second time, right? Which is interesting that it had such a worse hangover than the first time with a smaller amount of MDMA.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people should follow the 3-month rule, like never do it more than once in a 3-month period.
Yeah,
and there's also, the first time we did it in this recent period, we did this thing called NAC. We took loads of NAC in the like month or so leading up to it. And it has a pretty amazing effect somehow. I don't know. It resets your tolerance and does all this crazy shit. And with the second time around, we didn't bother doing that. We didn't really do our due diligence. We didn't sleep well at all. But the night before, so it was really bad. And it was interesting, to show, in fact, a perfect dichotomy, right? There's like the right way to do drugs and the wrong way to do them. And the outcomes are so different that it's so stupid to position though. Like, I'm sure you know people, right? And it probably being in depends on the country you're in. You can be here in Spain or be like in Italy or somewhere, and you see people drink and it's not a problem, and you're not going to go and lecture them about alcohol because they're fine.
Yeah.
And then you go out to like Newcastle or something on a night out in England, and you're like, these people need to never touch alcohol again in their lives. They're killing themselves, and this culture is broken, and this is so poisonous. And it's two totally different experiences from the same substance, and that comes down to like your mindset and your culture and your genetics and you as an individual and so many other factors, and your education on the subject and everything else, that it's really dumb, I think, for them to just be like, one pill killed her and stuff. It's idiotic.
No, that is interesting, especially like not even just the MDMA, but the alcohol differences that you mentioned geographically. I always wonder how much of it's genetic, because we're not really taught about it's just drugs are bad. It's not, well, some people have different biologies and the hooks of certain drugs sink more deeply into the veins of some people than others, and you're not really given that nuance in school, that sort of education. But the people in Newcastle that are having 2 to 3 beers and then decide to have 7 more are having a much different experience than the people in Italy that are having 2 glasses of wine and they go, all right, that's enough. Let's go to bed. I don't feel the need to push it further. It's like they're consuming the same drug, but their minds and their bodies are telling them 2 different things. And there's certainly a genetic component to that, but also just like what you said, the environment, how you're raised, your attitude around certain drugs versus others. It is fascinating when it all comes together.
Yeah, and your self-image, right? Again, the identity thing.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, I'm a fucking wreckhead, I'm gonna get fucked up, and then the Italian guy's like, I'm a normal man, and I'm just like, I'm with my family, and I don't want to like smash the bar.
Yeah, 100%. Well, if you're listening to this and you find yourself having a good MDMA trip, whether you are or you aren't, I recommend listening to Oloff's new album, Ciaran's new album, Hello, ? I was listening to it yesterday walking through the farm, and I'm terrible at remembering the names of songs, but it was like I'll just look it up because I'm gonna forget. But I think it was the second or third to last one of these days. And I was walking past a bunch of cows, and there were 2 teenagers picking up bottles, and I was just, that song was bumping, and I just felt very present, and life is really good. And the album, just the particular experience that I had just walking around listening to it, sun is bright, perfect temperature, not too hot like it gets in Panama a lot of days. Like, it was a very cool experience listening to the album, and it's great music, and it did feel like a journey, the music itself, going through almost like a trip through your mind. And I don't even know if you meant for it to feel like that, but it did feel like you were sort of getting like an inwards peak to your consciousness, and like the peaks and valleys and the voices and like the euphoria, the depression, the in between. It's a really cool album, and I'm going to link it to wherever people are listening to or watching this. They should definitely go check it out, whatever drugs you happen to be on at the time, or if you're sober, walking, sitting down. It's really good, and I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I love that description as well. That's exactly how I intend it to be. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. Thanks very much for the shout out.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say your headspace was like making the album? Were you purposely trying to get into the mode of, I'm gonna sort of give this emotional output for this track, or was it more I'm just gonna make a bunch of songs and then pick the ones that fit together as a story retroactively?
Probably somewhere between the two, I would say.
Yeah.
It started to become. There are a lot of similar ideas floating around in my head, feelings at the time, like in life in general, and it started to take shape early on. That's kind of what happens. Like there's another few songs I wrote at that time that have gone, they're kind of going into the next album. So yeah, they start to just kind of form somewhat naturally, but also with a little bit of me pushing them in a certain direction. And then once it's begun to form in a certain way, you kind of think more in that way and
Yeah.
then make more songs in keeping with those ideas. So for that album, a lot of it was to do as well with like, because we don't live in England, obviously we live around, different places, and we
Yeah.
move a lot. We've moved so many times. Like we've moved, I think now 18 times since we've been together in like 11 years or something. And so we
Damn.
never have any feeling of like being at home. And then we're often thinking about where we're going to move next, like what country we'll live in and all of this stuff. And it's kind of an obsession because we don't really know like where we should live and we can't really go back home. And so a lot of it was about that feeling. And then also sort of realizing or feeling as well that like in the end that is just a place, and that home is more of like a spiritual or mental thing. It's not really it doesn't have to be a place physically. It doesn't have to be one
Yeah.
place. Realistically, like your home is with your loved ones, right? Or your home is
Yeah.
doing the things that are important to you and being the person that you should be. That's more important than any like physical location. So that idea kind of took shape. And then yeah, generally I would just try. I tried sometimes as well to talk about things on it that are not difficult to talk about from a point of view of like too sensitive or personal, but some things that there's not an established template for writing about in songs, right? Like the third song is about someone we know who's like a very bad person, to be honest, and is like caused us a lot of pain in our lives, and an ill person, but ultimately, like realistically, someone who's done very bad things to us. And it's easy to write a song, for example, where you love someone, or to write like a rap song, like bragging about shit, because there's so many songs like that, and you kind of, subconsciously, you kind of copy those pastiches and styles. But sometimes I thought, I want to write about this topic, and there isn't really a template for writing about that, but I want to. And I would really like to be able to talk about this thing. And that was what I was happy with. With that song in particular, the third one, it's called Hey, like I was able to talk about this thing, and various other tracks on there as well. I felt like, I'm trying to put things into music that everyone feels, or a lot of people feel and go through that, but maybe you don't hear about that much in music.
Do you feel like if you find something that doesn't have a formula or topic, something to write about where there's no preconceived template, do you feel like that draws you in? Because now that I'm thinking about it, I did get that feeling when I'm listening to it that I didn't actually vocalize in the moment, but it doesn't seem like there was any sort of preset formula to these tracks where you were like, oh, I'm going to make a hip hop song with this one. I'm going to make a pop song. I'm going to do country. Like it all just kind of flowed in and out with no, set, like strict structure.
Yeah, generally, yeah, I really like things like that. I don't like stuff that's like super crazy just for the sake of it, like Captain Beefheart and all this like really weird stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing against it. I just don't really enjoy it. I like stuff that still sounds like music, but I always feel, if it sounds like so much other stuff, what is the point in making it? And other people seem often oddly obsessed with making stuff that sounds like something they recognize. And I try to just make stuff that is like just authentically me and that I like and that feels right, but I don't pay any mind to if it sounds like something else. And sometimes, I try to kind of make it not like anything else or not too similar to anything else.
Yeah, I like that, ditching the formula for a meaningful path, because a lot of people talk about, oh, I want to do something that no one's ever done before. And it's like, well, then go make a peanut butter and barbed wire sandwich. No one's ever done that before. It's going to be shit, but like if you like just doing shit for the sake of being new, leads to mostly garbage, and then occasionally there's meaning behind it. And I felt like this is one of the instances where if someone asked me like, what does it sound like, I wouldn't be able to give a concise, just down the middle answer. I could find things that were similar to it, but it did really feel like you were sort of like in the Oloff pocket.
Yeah, it makes it difficult in a way to promote. I don't know what genre you'd call it. I used to call it experimental hip hop, experimental rap, but it's kind of not. I don't think there is a genre for it. And I love that myself. Like, I'm really proud of that aspect, but it's weird you don't know who to show it to, where to promote it, and where it fits in. So from that point of view, it's tricky. But yeah, I always like that in other stuff. And I totally agree with you. Yeah, some people, it's experimental for the sake of it, and it's like, there's no point. It's just, anyone can make, experimental music that's completely unique. In fact, like a baby can do it quite easily, and they often do. Babies can make. You give them a keyboard, they'll make some wild shit, man. But it's not good. It's shit.
Yeah. Well, man, it's a pleasure talking with you. I always have such a fucking good time. I feel like we've shared too much to not have met in person, so hopefully our paths will cross soon, whether it's in the somewhere in the Americas or somewhere in Europe. We'll definitely have to meet up at some point just to hang out, whether we make something or not. It's always a good time.
I can make it out to the States sometime. I'd love to visit there, man.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a place to stay. You guys have a place to stay in New York if you make it there, and Panama. We'll figure it out, but the energy will align satanically at some point, and we'll come together to form our own occult.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this was really good, dude. Yeah, absolutely loved it, man. Really, really fun chat. Irrespective of recording, still just a really interesting, enjoyable chat and a laugh.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna just stop it real quick.
Let me quickly. Can I, before you do, can I quickly?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just wanted to mention quickly then, Cheek Clappers podcast. If anyone would like to check out my podcast, I do with my girlfriend. I love it personally. It's along with Oloff. It's like my favorite thing I've done.
It's very funny.
We did a couple of good ones recently. The Shrooms one and one before that. They're pretty good. If anyone's curious, to check it out. And youtube.com/BigDome1 for my videos in general.
Yes. Yeah. I've and again, sorry for forgot to mention the YouTube channel and the Cheek Clappers podcast, which I'm gonna link also with the music for people listening to this, watching this. I've been down the rabbit hole of your YouTube channel, which is how we did the first recording. I think it was the Kratom video that you recorded, and I was like, oh shit, like this is actually very interesting. And then I went through a bunch of your videos, and then same thing with Cheek Clappers, where I was just listening to it in the background when I was working, and then I was like, oh fuck, like I'm actually not getting work done because it's fucking funny, and now I'm paying attention to it. So now it's just in my rotation of podcasts. So definitely go check it out. Again, Ciaran, thank you so much for hopping on the show, and
thanks for having me.
We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Peace.